And we begin this Sunday morning with breaking news on the war in Iran. President Trump announcing moments ago a naval blockade of the Strait of Hormuz is beginning. Coming up in moments, President Trump will join me in an exclusive interview to give us the very latest on the war on Iran, as high-level talks between the United States and Iran have concluded with no deal. It was the first direct talks between the two countries in a decade, and the highest level talks between the two since the Islamic Revolution in 1979. The talks beginning on Saturday and lasting 21 hours in Islamabad, Pakistan. Vice President J.D. Vance was in Pakistan leading the U.S. delegation, along with Jared Kushner and Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, as a fragile ceasefire has been underway between the two sides since Tuesday, after President Trump agreed to give Iran 2 more weeks to open up the Strait of Hormuz or face further destruction. Now the president will implement a naval blockade on the strait. Here's Vice President J.D. Vance after the talks in Islamabad this morning.
We have been at it now for 21 hours.
Wow, this whole issue been going on with the Strait of Hormuz. What I find most significant is like how we gonna work our way up out of this, and because of the cultural differences between the United States and Iran, right? I didn't see a way up out of this. Apparently, right, some things have come up that, first of all, Trump's going to do a blockade on the Strait of Hormuz, which is very important, right? Look, economically, right, instead of invading the country, instead of sending our troops over there, right, and we have to prepare with a war with China. That's just pure point blank. China is not a warmongering country, but yet and still we got to prepare for this war with China, because China what China try to do is use Iran as a pivot point to an indirect conflict with the United States, and we got to understand that as a country. This is why they was giving Iran so many weapons, so much weaponry in trade for their oil. I think the Iranian leadership is real stupid to not understand this. It wants to go to war. China wants to go to war with America, but necessarily don't want to be the individuals who have a direct conflict. So they chose to use Iran stupidly, they felt. And I think probably even Russia was probably trying to do this as well. You know, China wants to become the #1 world power. I don't see any significance of this for Russia to allow China to do such. Russia has so much control of its people that it likes the control that it has over its people with its oligarchy, right? That it doesn't really care about being #1. As long as it's able to keep control of the people in the way that it has, kind of like what Iran has been doing to its people. With all the individuals that were getting killed, its citizenry, all the Iranians who were being killed by the Iran government, the leadership. With the attack that had been on other countries and neighboring countries, right? All these missiles from all these other countries that have been getting hit, that are neighbor to Iran, Muslim countries at that. Iran has been a problem, pure point blank. There's no way that we can allow them to have a nuclear weapon, but they seemingly will not revolt from that. I had this idea that if we send troops over there, how do we attack culture? How do we attack culture when it's a culture that's been driving this for almost the last 50 years? So we're not fighting just a functional battle with Iran in terms of the Strait of Hormuz. What we're fighting is an ideology, a culture. And so how do you want to pivot between completely knocking this country from what it is to basically a third world country and not expect more revolting, more hatred for the United States up out of that? Well, the only way that you can honestly do that is to hurt this country economically. let me allow these individuals to talk. But we're going to get into an interview by Donald Trump and let him talk about this situation as well.
Hours, and we've had a number of substantive discussions with the Iranians. That's the good news. The bad news is that we have not reached an agreement, and I think that's bad news for Iran much more than it's bad news for the United States of America.
Look, I think this whole peace talk was a bad thing for Iran as well. Pure plain blank, it was stupid. You know you wasn't going to allow yourself to come under some type of control within the United States, that you wasn't going to have any type of nuclear power, right? Or nuclear weapons. And here you are, you're going to go to this peace talk to try to come to some agreement with regards to not having any nuclear weapons, knowing that you are not going to relent from that. So what was the need for going? Excuse me. So what was the need for going? Pretty much, right? All the United States did, all you offered the United States the opportunity to do was get some more intelligence with regards to your leadership to knock you down. Pure point blank. Those leaders that came to that peace meeting, much longer do you expect them to last after this peace talk? If the United States don't get you, Israel is.
Joining me now live on the telephone with the very latest is the nation's 45th and 47th President of the United States, President Donald J. Trump. Mr. President, thank you so much for being with me this morning. I know that your time is limited, and we appreciate you making the time to explain all of this to our audience. Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Maria.
Mr. President, can you explain to us what is going on right now with the blockade in the Strait of Hormuz?
Well, we're going to be blockading. It'll take a little while, but it'll be effective pretty soon. And we had meetings yesterday. They, as you said, lasted 21 hours. That was a long meeting. We had some very, very good representatives, as you know, J.D. and Steve and Jared. So we were well represented, but we didn't get there on the important issue. They want to have nuclear weapons. They're not going to have nuclear weapons. I've been saying that for 30 years. I would never allow that to happen before I was in politics. And that country will not have nuclear weapons. Most countries shouldn't be allowed to have, but that country will not have nuclear weapons.
So, Mr. President, was that the red line there? Can you explain to us what went on in these talks? What did the United States ask of Iran, and how did they react?
Well, they reacted. You know, it was very interesting. It started off weak. They came in like they had the cards, but they don't have the cards. Their army, their whole military is obliterated. The whole place is obliterated. And, you know, as you know, levels of leaders are gone. They're literally gone. Khomeini's gone. The whole thing is gone. The whole place is gone. They have one thing that they can do. They can say, well, gee, we're going to put a mine someplace just a mine. We'll drop 1 mine, 2 mines, 10 mines. And that will, if you have a ship that costs $1 billion, you say, well, you know, I'd prefer not getting whacked by a mine, losing my ship, or damaging it badly, at least. And so that's a little bit of a thing that they can do, and that it's military might and military power don't do it, but, you know, it's extortion, and they're extorting the world. You know, we don't get our oil from there. We have so much, and one thing you said, and I don't know if anybody heard it well, but we have boats pouring up to the United States. They'll be filling them up, and they'll be leaving, and they're going to be packed with the best oil you can get, light, sweet crude. They're going to have the best oil that you.
So while he's speaking with regards to that, I want to go back to this map a little bit, because it just shows you all the nuclear sites that Iran has, right? It has 3 of them. It has 3 nuclear sites. Come on, baby, let's go. It has 3 nuclear sites. Anyway, it has 3 nuclear sites. It has some more power plants. It has some military sites as well. All this stuff has to get knocked down by Donald Trump. What I'm worried about, and this map right here, which is being displayed to you right now by Fox News, is showing you the travel that is taking place with regards to all the ships that was stuck in the Strait of Hormuz, for them individuals to come to the United States and get some of the United States light, sweet crude oil. So the problem with the United States oil, and you may wonder why are individuals not getting oil from the United States instead of going to Iran? Why won't they just come to the United States and get it where it's safer, where they can go back and take the United States oil, refine it, and then use it for production in energy production in their own countries? Well, the problem is that these refineries in other nations are built for heavy crude oil, such as that what you will see in Iran, such as that you will see in Venezuela, right? So this, you know, grabbing the United States oil, would necessarily mean that they will have to change the dynamics of their refineries, right? To produce or to refine that light, sweet crude oil. So this is a problem that the United States have, even though the United States have, more oil than anyone. The next three largest countries that actually produce oil probably except, Venezuela. That heavy crude oil, Venezuela got that in the bag. However, it has a problem with changing its refineries to process the United States oil at the moment. The United States can do a couple of things in assistance for these other countries to refine their oil. That is the United States oil, but that involves giving up some technology, some probably not technology secrets, some refinement secrets that ordinarily the United States has. It's not to say that they're that much of a secret, but it is to say, do you want to openly give another country your technology, right? No, that's probably not a good idea. The cost that comes with going around South Africa, not using the Strait Hormuz to get this oil from Iran, is going to increase shipping costs. So do not expect gas prices to go down anytime soon, right? How the United States can mitigate this is by doing a ship-to-ship transfer, but that also will keep prices of the crude oil up that the United States have. So they're going over here into the Gulf of the Gulf of America. I'm sorry. I almost called it that myself. They're going over here to the Gulf of Mexico, the Gulf of America, for these oil tankers to get filled up, because what's going to happen right now is Trump is going to have a blockade going up in the Strait of Hormuz. Is the reason why he's getting all these ships up out of there. He's escorting these ships up out of there because there are supposedly be mines within the Strait of Hormuz that Iran has laid down. So when all this is said and done, what Trump, I believe, is now strategically thinking of doing is going up in here and pretty much, when he speaks regards to ending the civilization of Iran, he means economically. He means knocking down these power plants, knocking down some of these water refineries, and he has some other options. He had one more other option. Now, the other option is that he stops the oil production that's going on over there in Iran as well. So take control of the oil, treat it like you're treating Venezuela, which is going to be a hard line. But the main thing with this grab is, right, once he take control of Cargill, once he take over the Iranian little section of the Strait of Hormuz, what you will have is no longer would you have to send troops over into the interior of Iran. What you will have is you will have Iran coming to the United States, coming to fight the United States. What do I mean by that? I mean that no longer will the United States have to bring the war to Iran. but it will be Iran having to bring the war to the United States. Strategically, I think that is a better outcome for the United States instead of trying to have this be like an Iraq and Afghanistan issue where we have troops out there and acting more like a police when we're not doing anything to necessarily change the culture. If you want your stuff back, come and take it. It's pretty much what I'm saying.
Can get. But so that's interesting, and it's great because we have a lot of oil. We don't get any. I mean, literally last year was 1%. We did that as a favor. We don't need the Strait. But other countries do. And I will tell you, while we're on the subject, we're very disappointed with NATO. We're very, very disappointed that they didn't come. Now they want to come and they want to help with the Strait, and it won't take long to clean it out. So we're going to clean out the Strait, and they'll be able to use the Strait in not too long a distance. But we had a very intensive negotiation, and toward the end, it got very friendly, and we got just about every point we needed, except for the fact that they refused to give up their nuclear ambition. And that's the only point, frankly, to me. That was the most important point by far.
And I want to ask you about that, and I will get to NATO as well. But, Mr. President, you wrote on Truth Social this morning saying that we will begin the process of blockading any and all ships trying to enter or leave the Strait of Hormuz. And at some point, we will reach an all being allowed to go in and all being allowed to go out basis. Right. So tell us what you're trying to accomplish with this blockade,
all in,
sir.
All out. Yep, it's called all in and all out. There'll be a time when we'll have them all come in and all come out, but it won't be a percentage. It won't be a friend of yours, like a country that's your ally or a country that's your friend. It's all or nothing, and that'll be that won't be in too long a distance. No, we're just bringing the ships up. We got a lot of ships, so we're bringing them up. We think that numerous countries are going to be helping us with this also, but we're putting on a complete blockade. We're not going to let Iran make money on selling oil to people that they like and not people that they don't like or whatever it is. It's going to be all or none, and that's the way it is. And it'll be, you saw what we did with Venezuela. It'll be something very similar to that, but at a higher level.
And Mr. President, you say that there may be a mine out there somewhere that nobody knows about but them, and this is world extortion. How will the United States ensure that the mines are removed in the Strait of Hormuz?
So we have minesweepers there now. We have highly sophisticated underwater minesweepers, which are the latest and the greatest. But we're also bringing in more traditional minesweepers. And so I understand is the UK and a couple of other countries are sending minesweepers. A lot of countries don't have minesweepers. Think of it. They had 28 mine droppers. What country has 28 mine droppers? 28 boats to drop mines. What country? They've been completely obliterated. They no longer... So we knocked out their entire Navy. They have 158 ships. They have 28 mine droppers.
All right, so it's important that you realize that there are different types of mines. You know, certain mines are magnetic. Some mines react from their surroundings, such as sound, right? So these mines will detonate just based on the technology that they were built on. So while certain technology that the United States may be able to detonate certain mines, it takes an assortment of technology, right? It's just not one type of technology because certain mines act differently depending on how they were made. So this is necessarily the problem with going in here and getting these mines and why it would take so long for Donald Trump. Like you can expect for the next 2 to 3 weeks that the United States is going to be in search of these mines to detonate them. And then from that point, here we will have the ability to not worry about the mines in the Strait of Hormuz and be able to go out there and get cargo, to be able to use the choke point that Iran has in the Strait of Hormuz, that little 30-mile wide radius, right? Which Iran has. It has like 3 or 4 little small islands over here. I don't necessarily know if you can see it, but here is little islands in here, right? That Iran pretty much uses in order to control the Strait of Hormuz within this section. And the reason why there's international waters, right, and Iran cannot control the Strait of Hormuz is because you have Kuwait up here, you have Saudi Arabia, you got Qatar, you got UAE. So it's like Iran can't take control. This is the reason why a joint venture, this whole joint venture idea with Donald Trump is not going to work. While seemingly it may have seemed like a good idea, it wasn't going to be a good idea from the point of giving Iran control of what comes in and what comes out of the Strait of Hormuz. Even though in terms of like the Gulf of America, you can see that Iran is a dominant factor in terms of its land with regards to this waterway, right? It has a whole lot of the territory. It can almost be called like the Gulf of Iran, right? However, you have us, unlike the United States, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 other countries that have access to this waterway too. So for this choke point to be controlled by Iran will pretty much affect these other 5 countries. And so this is the reason why a joint venture couldn't happen. Other than that, it seemed like a good idea, but it would be hurting countries like Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and UAE from being able to use this waterway as an opportunity for trade too.
Every single one of them is at the bottom of the sea. Can you believe it? We did that in 4 days. Their Air Force is gone. Their if you look, anti-aircraft. All of their radars out. Anti-aircraft their defensive program is all knocked out. They don't have anything. And you know the sad part is, and I can't say this is for you, we knocked out everything, including their leaders. Their military is gone. Everything's gone. Their missiles are down to a trickle. By comparison, we knocked out thousands of missiles. We knocked out hundreds of places where the missiles are built, different parts. They're pretty much gone. Probably they say 85, 82%, 85%. Who knows what it is? But we knocked them out. We knocked out where they make the drones, and the drones are less effective now. And also, we have new machinery to kill the drones. You saw that. The computerized bullets, they call it, and also lasers. The laser melts the drone. It's a beautiful thing to see. So we have a lot of stuff. But
Man, them computerized bullets that the United States have, I thought they was lasers at first. However, them is computerized bullets. Them things are amazing. Them things are blowing stuff up out there in Iran. You have to take a good look at some of the videos to where some of the targets are being hit in order for you to see the difference, because what's blowing up these targets are not bullets. These are these computerized, are not your ordinary artillery, right? What's blowing up these vehicles are these computerized bullets. And at first I wasn't for sure. I knew there was some type of laser form, right? However, I got to do a little bit more studying with regards to this. However, what they being called are computerized bullets, because I know it had to be some different from a laser because of the pulse, like a bullet that necessarily comes from its projectile, whatever. But them things are amazing. So if I can get a video to distinguish the two, because the difference between a laser and these computerized bullets is the laser has to stay on the target for a little while, right? So the laser had to be on the target for a little while for it to be effective to actually destroy the target. But these computerized bullets, they are knocking a lot of stuff back.
think of it. We win this thing conclusively. Even yesterday, they were saying, no, it was a complete obliteration. And when you read the New York Times, you think they're doing well. oh, they're fighting very hard. It wasn't a hard battle. This was a very easy battle militarily. But when somebody says, we're going to drop a mine in the middle of the Strait of Hormuz, not much you can do to persuade a ship owner that has $1 billion ship that we're going to take a trip up the strait. Now, yesterday, you probably saw, we sent 2 highly sophisticated, beautiful, brand new destroyers right through the middle of the strait, and nobody did anything to us because what we do is we follow the weapon back, so it follows back and it knocks out the people on the other side. Literally within 3 minutes, they're knocked out. The technology is unbelievable, but we don't know whether or not they do, whether or not they put mines. They didn't talk about it yesterday. My inclination is to have a few. And I will tell you, it was a good meeting yesterday, really a good meeting, except for one problem. And it's 95%. They want to have nuclear weapons. It's not going to happen.
And this is a key point, Mr. President. For those people out there who have not been following it as closely, can you explain to those people why it was critical for the United States to go into Iran? Can you articulate what was behind that move that was so important for the U.S. to go into Iran?
Yeah, so easy. The easiest question you've asked me so far. They can't have nuclear weapons. They have nuclear. They want to enrich what they have. They want to enrich more. As you know, we knocked out with the B-2 bombers. Had we not knocked that out, they would have had a nuclear weapon within 1 month after we knocked out. In other words, had the B-2s, those beautiful B-2 bombers, totally obliterated their 3 sites. They have 3 sites. And they are now deep in the earth with, tons of rock. Now, that material should be gotten, but we have cameras on it. We have satellites with Space Force. That was one of my beauties, Space Force. So important. But we're watching those. We're watching every single aspect of that area. They can't move without us knowing exactly what's going on. But it's deep down, and it takes a long time to get it out. It's an amazing attack. Had we not done that, they would have had, within 1 month from that date, they would have had a nuclear weapon.
Right.
If they had a nuclear weapon, they would have used it on Israel and the Middle East. Look, they went after 5 countries that were sort of neutral, I guess. I don't know how friendly they were, but they weren't in the line of attack. They dropped on UAE probably 1,800 missiles. They dropped on Saudi Arabia a lot, and they dropped on Qatar a lot. They dropped on Bahrain. They went crazy, and everyone was surprised. Actually, it was good for us because they all joined us immediately. At some point. I mean, they're either going to be petrified or they're going to join. They all joined, and they've been very helpful. All of these countries have been great, and Kuwait.
And this is the key point that I was getting to, and the reason that you feel they cannot have a nuclear weapon because they will use it. And that's what I wanted you to explain to the audience.
Yeah, I think they would use it. And they'd start with Israel, and one weapon would, do damage like nobody's ever seen. Wipe it out. Conceivably, big one.
Now,
not wipe it out. They don't need more than one. And then they go after the Middle East, and then they'd eventually come here, okay? And we're not letting them come here, and we're not going to let them. We have great allies over there. I'll tell you, those 5 countries. Look at the Israeli relationship. Look at the incredible partnership we have on this. And as Bibi Netanyahu said, we're the big brother, and they're the small brother. And it's been a very effective team. What we've done literally in a matter of days, within 3-4 days, Iran essentially was wiped out. And it's so sad, though, when the press says they're fighting bravely. They're not fighting bravely. They have no anti-aircraft. We fly over there at will, can take out anything we want. As you know, last week I said we're going to strongly consider knocking out their power plants and the rest of their bridges. We took down their big bridge, but we just did that because we were having good discussions, and they go to the press. They're very good with public relations, much better with public relations than they are at fighting. They go to the press, and they say, President Trump said it's okay for us to have a nuclear weapon, when I never even spoke to him. And by the way, that would be the only thing I would never say to them. And they know that.
Right.
And then.
Okay, so that's the power plants and the bridges. They got some water refineries that Donald Trump was speaking with regards to wanting to destroyed as well. However, even with that, you got to recognize that here at this moment, what Donald Trump needs to necessarily do is not just have a functional victory with these individuals, especially how after all this, you still don't want to come to terms with you just can't have a nuclear weapon. All right, so we laid down the three nuclear sites, and you still not getting the picture, right? You still go and get all this artillery from China or whatever, whoever you got it from. You spend all your money on weaponry instead of doing for your citizens, and then on top of that, you kill citizens as well, just for speaking up with regards to whatever economic conditions is going on out there, right? And they want to be relinquished from your control. So 45,000 people have gotten killed in the most recent times with regards to the former leadership that was over there. So it's not necessarily a regime change. A regime change is not working. What's happening is there is a culture out there to where it has been dictated that we are against the United States of America and all of their allies. Whoever works with the United States of America, we have no ties with them. And my only question for Donald Trump would be, okay, now that we're going to assume control of the Strait of Hormuz, we're going to take that away from Iran. We're going to take control of their oil. We're going to have to, essentially, he just said it, right? We're going to have to take out that leadership, bring some more leadership in here, because that leadership is still going to drive this whole idea of we hate America and we want nuclear weapons. So this is the reason why I say these individuals who just went to these peace talks, that was the dumbest things that you could have did, because you just basically raised your hand to get killed. And you assumed yourselves to be leaders of this whole idea who don't want to just break it down. So my only question for Donald Trump at this moment, because taking over the Iranian oil would be simple. The Strait of Hormuz, that little chunk point, at the moment, you can see that they are having no problem with that, right? With all these threats of to attack the ships that's going through the Strait of Hormuz, right? There is no problem. At the moment, I feel that what Donald Trump should be noticing or expecting is that Iran expects some type of assistance from China. It's not to say that would happen, but what would make them so bold to where they feel like we were going to still fight this whole issue? Unless it's just a cultural thing, right? And the reason why I thought it was a bad idea to necessarily go down there and knock down the power plants, when a lot of people out there in Iran was praising the fact that, hold on, just like 2 months ago, you guys was out there in the streets protesting against the regime. Now you're going to be here against the regime. So I thought it would be a bad idea to knock down the power plants, because what you would have the elderly and the children being the most affected, and you will have this regime you would give this regime more of the ability to go out and recruit young men to be against the United States, because they see the suffering that is happening between the women, the elderly, and the children, right? So I thought that the power plants was necessarily going to be a bad idea, but apparently what Donald Trump is fighting right now is culture. My only question, like I said, would be to Donald Trump is, how are you going to go out there and get the uranium? What kind of talks were there with regards to going out there and getting some of that uranium that was necessarily created for the building of these nuclear weapons? I don't know how that has gone. However, you see the dynamics that Trump is dealing with when it comes to this whole thing with Iran. I'm gonna let him answer a couple more questions. I don't know how far I'm gonna get, but I just want to strike at the balance that's got to happen, right? For us to be able to get out this thing. Gas prices are going to be hit because, as you see, until they take over, Cargill begins to produce that relationship with Iran, and I don't think it's going to be the one that was in that peace talks, of course. However, until they build that relationship up and put a regime in there that they can deal with, what you're going to have is gas prices are going to be increasing. At least what can be happening is that these other countries can be going to get the United States light sweet crude oil, but they will have a problem with refining it. Probably the United States has to do that for these other countries themselves without having to modernize their refineries in those countries to accept the United States crude oil, or they can also go and get it from Venezuela. Either choice, the travel that these ships have to take in order to get this oil is that much more farther. It's double, and it's going to take that much more money to get out to these other countries. So there is a logistics problem. However, let's let them finish talking.
The New York Times, which is a fake paper. It's just a fake. You just believe the opposite. It's so sad when you look at CNN, the New York Times, ABC fake news, NBC fake news. When you look at this stuff, it's so sad to see it. I mean, they report things that they know are false. It's almost treasonous, actually, if you want to really know the truth. It's almost treasonous. But if you're reading the New York Times exclusively, and their circulation, by the way, is way down.
Yeah.
It's way down. I'm proud to report that. But if you're reading the New York Times exclusively, you would say that they are doing great in the war.
Mr. President,
They're doing terribly.
I want to ask you about
The only
that.
thing they have is the ability to say, well, we may have some mines. And if you have a ship, who wants to take a chance? You're not going to take a chance.
Mr. President, I want to ask you about that because you put out a tweet and it really gripped the nation a week ago when we were all waiting and watching for the United States' next move should the Iranians not open the Strait of Hormuz. And you wrote this on Truth Social: a whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. I don't want that to happen, but it probably will. However, now that we have a complete and total regime change where different, smarter, and less radicalized minds prevail, maybe something wonderful can happen. Mr. President, you were criticized for this tweet because you said a whole civilization will die tonight. What do you want to say about that? And what can you tell us about next steps here? Are you planning further destruction?
Yeah, I'm fine with it. That statement brought them to the table, with the exception of the one thing, which I believe that they're going to give up on. I believe they're going to give up on that pretty soon, to be honest, because it's not going to work. We actually thought we had them, and then all of a sudden they said, no, we want. So, but I believe, no. And when I say that, but remember, what have they said to us? For years, I've had to listen to them say, death to America, right? They say, death to America, death to Israel, America, the Satan. We will destroy America, death to America. Now, does anybody ever complain to you when they say that? I think that's a big step worse. Death to America. So they're allowed to say death to America. And what I'm referring to is, when I talk about civilization, it'll be much different because their military will be totally gone. It's pretty much gone now. But their military, look at their leadership. We have had regime change because the people we dealt with yesterday were, frankly, very smart, very sharp, very good. I think they were smarter than the people from before, Khomeini and that group. Because look what it got them. Look what all of their antics were spending they spent all their money on weapons. We've destroyed most of those weapons. But when I say about a civilization, it really has changed. It really has. But think of it. They're allowed to say death to America, death to this, death to. And I make one statement, they say, oh, such a big deal. Let me tell you, that statement got them to the bargaining table, and they haven't left. They haven't left the bargaining table.
And not only that, man, you can just tell and see, just talking about, the functions of it being a civilization. He's not talking about going over there and nuking the place. I don't think he answered the question in the way that, would draw a balance for the Democratic Party to be happy to not making attempts to impeach him, right? Because what the Democratic Party right now, just based on that statement right there, is trying to impeach him when you can't necessarily, it's a waste of time, because you can tell by his strategy and what he's doing right now that he's not talking about nuking the place. He's talking about just getting control of the place to where they not allowed to have a nuclear weapon. Particularly what he has to fight right now with regards to that is this culture. And that's culture in leadership, right? It's the leadership who's pretty much driving this whole idea. And it's not, I can't necessarily say that's going to be all the people, because these same people is going out there protesting. So that's something that I didn't want to see happen. I didn't want to see him knocking down the power plants, knocking down the bridges, but pretty much the power plants. It would be the most devastating thing that he can do, because like I said, you will be kind of having the idea of this hatred towards America be that much more when the young man in this country will have to see the women, the children, and the elderly mostly being affected by not having heating, not being able to have any power during the winter and stuff like that. Like he said, this is going to set them back probably 10, 15 years before they are able to get these power plants back up. And so to see them going through that suffering for that longer time, and them to not care, just go to show you what type of leadership it absolutely is. This strategy with regards to him trying to take over Cargill and the Strait, that control point with regards to the Strait, listen, it's the best idea. I knew that this was going to have to happen in terms of him having to go take over the oil. That was his strategy that he came up with a long time ago. However, it is better to do this, right? If you really wanted to hurt him, just to go over there and treat it like Venezuela. And until a regime absolutely comes and it can be determined that the administration can work with, that would do right for the Iranians as citizens, and not just buy all the weaponry up. Not just use the funds that's coming from the oil to buy up weapons so that they can try to act like the big boss of the Middle East, that it could pretty much have a better relationship. And you will have, what you will have is, if you really want us out of your country that much, when we take over your stuff, then you will come take your stuff back. That's just a better strategy. Bring the war, have them bring the war to us instead of us taking the war to them. And at that point, I think you could leave out the power plants. But if you control the money, if you can control the economy and the way that the money is being spent, it works out better for Iran. Tiny Cross-H.U.G on the Trumped Up Live Show. Always remember, man, like, share, subscribe to the channel. It's a good day to be a soldier.